give Bob Miller a big hand and a welcome. Bob, come on up here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Has this ever happened to you? You go to an event, you meet someone, they tell you their name, and then within several seconds, you've forgotten who they are. Wouldn't it be great if you could simply reach into your memory and retrieve the names of everyone that you met at an event, no matter how many people are there? You demonstrate care and commitment to your new friends and prospects. You'd show yourself to be a competent business and sales professional. They'd remember you because you remembered them. Who would like to be able to remember the names of everyone you meet at an event? Honestly, if you'd like to do that. All right, that's great. Is there anybody that can do it right now?
Yes.
Yes? You mean, besides me? Yes, well, we'll find out if I can do it. That is why I'm here today. You can do this too if you believe that you can learn it. Now, I would like to greet all of you, and I am going to greet all of you eventually, but for right now, I'd like to personally just greet a few people. And I'm going to come around and look right at you, not because I'm looking at your name tag, but because I looked for a striking feature when I met my friend Bill here, and Bruce, and Bob. Oh, we got that Bob, and Tom, and Bob, and Rick. I don't want to forget this other Bob, too, because there's so many great Bobs here. And my friends Marshall, and we've got another Bruce, isn't it? Yeah, and we've got Dale, and we've got Roger, and we've got Bob and Herman. All right. I know what you're thinking now. Good looks and brains. People are very concerned about memory. They're very concerned about being embarrassed by memory. In fact, there's Apple spent millions of dollars on a commercial telling how you could use their AI device, Siri, to ask it who you met with last week because you see them again in the room and you can't remember the guy's name. Apple knows it's important to people. There's a Seinfeld episode where Jerry Seinfeld is spending the whole time trying to remember the name of his girlfriend. He forgot it, and it's too late. He can't ask her now, so he's digging in her purse, trying to get that. He's asking his friends to ask her, and she finally breaks up with him at the end of the episode because she realizes that he doesn't know her name. In fact, there was also an episode of The King of Queens, where Doug Heffernan, the delivery driver, went to his wife's fancy company party, and he met the company president. And within seconds, he forgot the company president's name. And rather than admit he forgot the name, he just faked a heart attack and was taken away in an ambulance. That's how much people don't want to be embarrassed. Well, those are fictions, but now I'd like to tell you the true story about Sue, the college graduate. This story was told to me by Sue many years later. She was my sister-in-law. When she was first applying for her teaching job, she came into the interview and was greeted by 5 men. And the interview was going okay until about 20 minutes in. She was asked, "Sue, what do you know about John Brown?" Well, she thought about her educational training, couldn't come up with anything, and said, "I don't know who John Brown is. I've never come across that name." And the director said, "Yes, you did, Sue. He was the 3rd man you were introduced to today." Well, Sue was devastated. She was shocked, embarrassed, as you can imagine, right? It wrecked the whole interview for her, because during the whole interview in her head, she's thinking, these people must think I'd make a terrible teacher because I'm not paying attention. And she didn't get the job. But she remembered the lesson all her life, and she told it to me many years later. But we don't go to an interview or even a meeting like this or a company event or a church group. We don't go there in order to memorize names. We go there because we have our own agenda, our own reason for being there. But I know what it's like to be called by the wrong name, because I grew up with an identical twin brother. So for the first 19 years of my life, before he went off to college, I was called by the wrong name. That's why my McDonald's name tag said Bob or Bill, because that's what people called me anyway. In fact, I've got a before picture right there. Can you tell which one I am? Am I on the right or the left? I'm actually on the right. Same position in the after picture. So as you can see, we used to sort of look quite a bit alike. In fact, we looked so much alike that our out-of-state relatives couldn't tell us apart, so they just called us the Minnesota Twins. Right? And I had a cousin who called us Bob and more Bob. And now Bill's grandchildren just call me Grandpa Fake. Now, when you're a twin, the question that you always get asked all the time that's very irritating is, who was born first? And I hated that question because it was Bill that was born first. And he would always say like, I am, as if he was taking credit for it. And so it annoyed me very much. And so because he was born first, he was named after our grandfather. So Bill was given the name William T. Miller II. And he was very proud of that. All through high school, he'd signed his name with his Roman numerals, William T. Miller II, marking it like Zorro. He was very proud of it, and it always annoyed me. So I discovered, when I married my sweet Becky 5 years ago, I discovered that I could change my name legally for free. So I changed my name to Robert D. Miller III, just to outrank him. My brother couldn't believe it. I had to show him a copy of my marriage certificate to prove it. And he said, "You mean you changed your name just to annoy me?" Yes, I did. That's twin rivalry, right? Well, we all have our own reasons. If you want to learn names, you have to have an internal reason. You have to know what your why is. Why do you want to be able to recall names quickly? Everybody should have their own internal reason because it's not easy. It does take some time to learn, so you've got to have an internal motivation. But there's also some external motivations that I'm going to share with you. And I'm just going to quickly go through the stats here. Basically, all of these stats are saying that people are lonely. 33% of the population says that they feel that they lack companionship. 57% of the population says that they feel some type of loneliness sometime. The green one down here, 25% of the population says that they are more lonely post-COVID. And the other one, the blue one, says that about 21% of the population says that sometimes they feel extremely lonely. Now, what that means is that people are open to a relationship. They want to be known by somebody. They want to have that relationship, and that's good for us. So it's good. They want you to know their name. Even your dog likes her name. You may be saying, "Ginger, I've had it for the last time. I want you to stay out of the garbage. You hear me, Ginger? You hear me?" And all that Ginger hears is, blah, 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 Ginger, blah, 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 Ginger. Because that's all the dog cares about is her own name. And that's the way it is with a lot of people. Everybody wants to know what's in it for them. So using the names does something to people. In fact, this next set of graphs, I'm just going to go through this very quickly. These are talking about what happens in the brain when people hear their name. The green one there says brain activity, says that if you frequently use people's names, the parts of the brain that deal with memory, attention, and perception light up. People are paying attention, and it increases a sense of conversation and companionship by 30%. People feel more engaged with you. The other one, the blue one, says that it affects people's emotions. Frequent name use can increase feelings of closeness by 28%. Makes a difference. For sales, the yellow one, the Harvard study says that salespeople who frequently use customers' or prospects' names have a 16% higher chance of closing the sale, and they have a 25% higher customer satisfaction rate. And finally, the pink one is talking about education. Teachers who regularly use students' names create what's called a trust environment, making the students feel comfortable to share, resulting in 25% more sharing and involvement. Of course, I didn't know any of those stats when I got into it, and I didn't get into it because of the stats. Let me tell you about how I started. I was a professional magician, as Victor said, for 20 years when I lived in Rochester. That was my job. I went all over the state doing shows, and I would often do corporate events where I would get hired by a company, and I would do some walk-around magic before during the social hour. That's the close-up tricks, the sleight of hand. And then after dinner, I would usually do a stand-up show. Everybody would be seated like this, and I'd be doing a larger performance. And I never used to ask audiences their names, because what was the point? I mean, I wasn't ever going to see these people again. But one Christmas, I was performing for a small company in Mankato. There's less than 20 people there. So I just decided, just to be friendly, I'll just ask people their names before I ask them to pick a card. I was not trying to remember people's names, but I was just asking people. Well, somebody in the group thought that I was trying to do this because I overheard him talking with somebody else where he said that he'd seen a memory speaker who named everybody in the audience. So I looked around like this and I went, I kind of walked around and reviewed, and I said, I think I know everybody here. I said, yeah, Bob and Tom and Bill and Stefan and Randy, yeah, I know him. And John and Dick and Kurt and Tim and Matt and Ed. I said, yeah, I think I know everybody in the audience. So after dinner, after my first magic trick, I just said I'd like to personally greet everyone, and I named everybody in the audience. You know what the reaction was? Instant applause. It was like, whoa, I probably got more applause for that than any of my magic tricks, because people knew it wasn't a trick. They appreciated it, they liked it, they wanted to be able to do it themselves. Now, as a performer, I live for applause, right? So I said, hey, I'm going to try to do that again. So every time I was at a magic show, I would practice with people's names. If I wasn't doing very well at it, I wouldn't name anybody up front, but I still practiced. But I got better and better. I would name 20 people. I could name 30 people in the audience. I could name 50 people in the audience. When I performed for the Dry Riders group in Hinckley, Minnesota, and there was 100 people there, I memorized 100 people and I called them all out, which was very impressive, but boring. And I really did do this. I've got a video on my website, which I'll be sharing later, a video that shows me recalling the names of 80 people that I just met at an event. So and after that, I just started training. I just started teaching people about it, about how to do it. And that's how I ended up here today. So let's talk about the how, what we're going to do here. First, I'm going to be giving you like 3 quick tips, and then I'm going to be giving you the 3 steps, which will take the longest. Tips and steps. The tips can be implemented immediately as soon as you hear them. And the first tip is so Zen-like in simplicity, you're going to be amazed at how I came up with this. It is, are you ready? It is, remember to remember. Pretty deep, huh? Remember to remember. Now, what I'm talking about here is presence of mind. Planning ahead. Like, for example, when you go shopping at the Mall of America and you park your car in the giant parking garage in the morning when there's no cars in there, not thinking that you're going to have to come back later and find your car. And then you're going to be walking around with the beeper trying to beep, beep, where is that? And then you're going to hear a car honk, and it's actually somebody else who also lost their car, right? So it's planning ahead. So if you just make the decision that whenever you go to an event, you say, I am going to try to remember names, that will make a difference because it's in your head already. You're thinking about it. The second quick tip is, as soon as someone tells you their name, repeat it back. No matter how simple it is, you repeat it back to them, right? You say, Herb, oh, your name's Herb? Okay, good. Good to meet you, Herb. Oh, your name's William? Good to meet you, William. Oh, your name's John, right? Okay, good to meet you, John. Your name's Bruce, right? Good to meet you, Bruce. Victor, good to meet you. So you say their name back like that. Okay, that's the second quick tip. And that will make a difference. The third tip is review. Review is required. This is not like a magic formula, okay? You will have to review. So before you leave an event, you look at everybody that you met and remind yourself of their name. Or if you get back from a networking event and you've got a stack of business cards, look at every business card and try to recall what the person looked like if it doesn't have a picture on there, which most of them don't. That will make a difference. Now I'm going to tell you one more freebie tip. Sometimes it's good if you help other people to remember your name. Say something like when I meet somebody who has a foreign name, I say, well, what's your name? And how do you tell these Americans how to remember it? That helps. So for example, when I meet people and I want them to remember my name, I just say, my name's Bob. That's Bob with one O. And that helps. So that's 3 tips right there. All these messages come from my book. The nice thing about the book is that it's printed in 14-point font, so I can read it too. And every 2 pages is a new story or a lesson. And I do have some of them at the table at the back too, for afterwards. So names are hard because we are trying to complete a formula that does not equate. And the formula is name equals face. People always say to me, I'm so bad at remembering names. Well, that's because you're trying to complete this formula, but there's missing variables. Name does not equal face because a name is a nonsense word with no definition, and a face is an image. And a word does not equal an image. There's some missing parts that we have to fill in there. And that's what this presentation is about. You have to fill those in using these 3 steps. Look, listen, and link. Now what I mean by that is you look at the person, you listen to their name, and you mentally link them together. Wow, that's easy, isn't it? Well, especially the first part, look. I mean, everybody should be able to look, right? Everybody can look. Well, in this culture, we don't really look. Our church has a greeting time every week. And one Sunday morning, I stood up and I shook hands with a man and I said, I'm Bob Miller. What's your name? And he said, I'm Sam. So I looked at him because I wanted to remember him if I saw him at church again. After church, my sweet Becky and I went to Menards. So did Sam. There he was, walking down the aisle right towards me. It was such a funny coincidence. I grinned, waved like we were old friends. I said, hi, Sam. You know what his reaction was? Huh? What do you think? Do you think he recognized me? You know how people do this? They wave and they keep on walking without saying anything? That's what I got from him. Because just an hour ago, he had looked at me, but he hadn't really looked. So when you look at somebody, you should look as if you had described them to a police sketch artist. Look at their head, look at their body. Are they tall, slim, wide, narrow? Look at their face and look for a striking feature. Look at their hair, their ears, their eyes, their nose. Look at their skin for any moles, scars, tattoos, or piercings. And choose one striking feature. In fact, you should choose the striking feature that is most noticeable. Why? Because when you see them again, 2 hours later, or a day later, or a week later, what are you going to notice? You're going to notice the striking feature, the first thing. So that's what you choose first, is that striking feature. Okay? So you have to look at the person. That's the first step. You got to be able to look. The second step is listen. Now, names are hard because they are nonsense words. What is a Michael? What is a Sally? What is a Lisa? They're words without definitions, right? Did you know that you cannot memorize something that has no meaning to you? Meaning is an essential requirement in order to remember something. That's why you can't remember names. It's not your fault. It's because the names don't have meaning to you. So you need to convert the person's name into something that's meaningful. Convert it into an image that you can imagine in your mind's eye. So for example, if someone says their name is Michael, you could imagine a microphone. Microphone. Is it a lapel mic? Is it a handheld mic? Is it a mic like this? But really see it in your mind's eye. If someone says her name is Sally, you could imagine a salad. But really see it. What kind of salad is it? Is it a taco salad? Is it a chef's salad? Really see it. If someone says that her name is Lisa, you could imagine a dog leash. Just that word leash is going to be enough to remind you. But what kind of dog leash? Is it made out of a chain or a cord? What does it look like? So we're not doing word association here. We're doing images. You actually must see an image. And the word the image that you choose does not have to rhyme or start with the same letter. For example, I remember the waiter at the Mexican restaurant is named Elvis because I just imagined him holding a guitar. Okay, so this is not a sounds alike system. This is a reminds you of system. Whatever reminds you of that name, that's what you should choose. Now we've just done two things in the formula. We've met a person and we've chosen one striking feature. So we brought it in a little bit closer, that striking feature that will remind us of who they are. We've heard their name and we've brought that, given them some meaning to that by converting their name into an image. Now we have two images. We have an image for their name and we have a striking feature for their looks. And now you can mentally link them together in a funny or unusual way. Something like this. The bobber will remind you of the name Bob, and my striking feature, of course, is that I'm follically challenged. So you can do something like this in your head mentally whenever you meet somebody. You just mentally link them together. Now, why does it have to be funny or weird or unusual? You know why? Because weird, unusual, and strange is easier to remember. Boring and ordinary is not easy to remember. That's why it's so hard for me to remember some of your names. Just kidding. You guys are all memorable as I'm demonstrating here today, right? So you have to link them together. And that's really the three steps. Look, listen, link. Now, I always ask people for comments and reviews after my presentations, and one of the most common requests I get is, Bob, can you give us some more examples? I will be asking all of you for some comments and some feedback too, but I will tell you right now for some more examples. I'm going to tell you two very easy ones, okay? Here's the first guy. Does anybody know what this dog's name is?
Spike.
Exactly. Who said that?
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay. Thank you, Bruce. That's Spike. That's from the Tom and Jerry cartoon. You see the red spiked collar? That's the name cue that reminds you. The spiked collar reminds you that his name is Spike. Now, these are angel wings. Whenever I meet somebody who's named Angel, Angela, Angelo, this is what I use to remember their name. Now, I use those two images in order to help me to recall names. So first, let me tell you about Spike. When my brother Bill and I got hired at McDonald's on the same day as a boy named Tom. And at that McDonald's in St. Cloud, everybody was given a nickname by the grill crew, and the nickname was put on your name tag. That's why my name tag said Bob or Bill, and Bill's said Bill or Bob. Well, Tom was given the name of Spike because he was short and stout, his neck was as thick as his head, and he had a bulldog face. And the name stuck. 50 years later, I'm still calling him Spike. Everybody knows him as Spike. I even heard his mom call him Spike. So somehow that name just really fit. Okay? Angel, that's what I use for angel, the symbol for the name. I was at a networking event, a Chamber of Commerce event, and I met a woman named Angel. And she had straight white hair, as white as these wings, going down both sides of her head. She was standing underneath a lamp, so she had sort of a halo over her head. And her name was Angel. And I said, Angel, I will never forget your name because it is so appropriately matched to the name image that I use. Now, they're not all like that, but that's an example of how I was able to remember their names. But let's do some more difficult ones, okay? That's a Bic pen. My wife's name is Becky, so if I ever forget, I just remember that. That's the image. You can use whatever you want, but for Becky or Rebecca, that's what I use, a Bic pen. This is a mirror. My wife has a daughter named Miranda, and the mirror is the name image that I imagine when anyone is named Miranda. You know what name that represents? That's Sally. See, you guys are learning already, right? Exactly. And so you just have to convert the name into an image. Now, some of you may be curious about what images I used for your name. And so if you would like me to tell you, and I think we're gonna for this, just raise your hand if you'd like me to tell the image. We'd like to focus on this side of the room the most because I didn't name everybody over here. For Tim, tin can. Who else we got? Okay. Let's see. Let's do somebody else. Let's see. Okay. Stefan. Stefan. I thought of the phrase "step on," and he's got this nice vest. Okay, I'm using clothing today, right? He's got this nice vest there, puffy vest, and I thought about that, about stepping on. Let's try. Somebody here wants to know. Oh yeah, I got to do this table, right? In fact, Fran. Okay, he was one of the first people that I met. Okay, right? He's got this mustache, white mustache like that. Now, my image for Fran, for the name Fran, is France. So I think of a beret. That's just my symbol. You can think of whatever you want. You could think of French fry or the Eiffel Tower or whatever you want, right? Okay, somebody else is going to raise their hand. I'm going to name it somebody else. Okay, and we've got Daryl. Okay. Yeah, we got Daryl. Okay, that's right. Daryl. I met him very early, and I just said, Daryl the plaid barrel. That's what I came up with. For Dave, Dove. Okay? Anyway, so those are just some examples of how you can convert. You have to convert a name into an image that you remember. All right? Well, let's talk about this a little bit. About memory. When I told you all that I could remember 40, 50, 80 people, how many of you had this thought in your head and this feeling in your heart that you could not do that? Let's be honest. Raise your hand. Okay? Thank you for being honest about that. I understand that because it seems like a difficult task. If I ask people, do you have a good memory? They almost always say no. If I say, do you have a good imagination? They usually say yes. Oh, imagination? Sure. You bet. I can imagine lots of stuff. So you've seen that when we're imagining name images connecting to striking features, that's not memory. That's imagination. So this has less to do with memory and more to do with imagination. This is not memorizing. This is imaginizing. It's imaginizing. Do you have an imagination? You can do this. And this is going to seem strange, but it is not any harder to imagine 10 name images than it is to imagine 20 name images. It's the same because it's your imagination, it's not your memory. As long as you make a very clear picture in your mind, you'll be able to do it. Now, when you say, I can't do something, that's called a self-limiting belief. A self-limiting belief. Self-limiting beliefs chain you down. They hold you back. Why would you try to do something that you didn't think you could do? Why would you even start the attempt if you knew you were going to fail? Now, self-limiting beliefs apply not only to name recall, but they apply to every part of your life. Are you in sales? Do you consider yourself a $100,000 salesman or $1 million salesman? You're setting your belief right there in your mind. Okay? Do you think you're going to be successful at your next venture? Your belief is going to determine that. And it's the same with name recall. In the song Already Gone, the Eagles sing, sometimes we live our lives in chains, not even knowing that we have the key. And the key is to believe in yourself. Say, yes, I think I can. I know I can do that. And if you do that, then you're going to have a very cool experience. You might go to an event sometime. You might go to an event and you might meet a lot of people and you might be trying to put this into practice. Say, I'm going to work on these names. And then later, an hour later, 2 hours later, the next day, a week later, you're going to see somebody from the event and you're going to think, I wonder what their name is. And you're going to notice the striking feature. And the striking feature is going to notice, like when I look at Roger, I notice the striking feature, and that's going to remind me of Jolly Roger, which will remind me of his name. And they'll be like, ding, a light bulb goes off in your head. You'll say, hey, I know you. And you're going to call them by name, and they'll feel great. and then you'll feel great because you did something hard, and then you're going to know the system works. But it's only going to, you're only going to be able to test if it works if you believe that you can probably learn how to do it and you attempt it. So you have to have that belief that you can do it. Then you'll have a great experience. And I want you all to have a sense or feeling of how easy that is. So I'm going to introduce you to some people now. See that guy standing right there between Bill and I? You know what his name is? Absolutely. His name is Spike. You never met him before, but the name image cued you. Imagine that. Just imagining that caller cued you off on the name. It was simple, right? Here's a woman you haven't met. What's her name? That is Angel, because the striking feature of her straight white hair hanging down reminded you of the angel wings, which reminded you of their name. Was that easy? I mean, that was easy to do. Anybody can do that. Let's do something a little bit more difficult. Okay. We're going to talk about striking features now. As you look at this model here, what would you say is a striking feature for her? First thing you notice. See, it's different for everybody. For whoever, there's no wrong answer here. It's different for everybody. For me, I looked at the hair. Now, if you look at that hair, what word or noun would you use to describe that hair? Bedhead. Bedhead? I looked at it and I said, that's a nest. That's a nest. So that's what I would use for striking feature for this woman. But we don't know what her name is. Okay? But we've got the striking feature. Now, what if I imagine that there was a lot of Bic pens in that nest? Then her name would be Becky, right? What's her name now? What's her name now? Miranda. You see, it doesn't matter what the name is, what the image is, what the striking feature is. You just join them together in a funny way. And that's the way that works. Huh? Robin. Okay, you could use Robin too, for sure. Right? Thank you, William. Well, we know intuitively that it's good to remember names. We know it's good for business, right? You know it's good for personal relationships. If you could just get over that name hurdle, get to know them right away, then you can start to have a conversation. But you got to get through that name. Sometimes the name can be a hurdle because you've met them earlier in the meeting and you want to talk to them later because you think, hey, this person might be a great prospect, but you forgot their name and now you're too embarrassed to tell them. So then you've just lost out on your chance to talk to that prospect, right? But is the only reason to remember names just so we can serve ourselves? Just so that we can gain another business prospect or a new friend, a new acquaintance? Or is there a deeper reason, a more important reason? I think there's a better reason. When I was 19 and I was still living at my parents' house in Clear Lake, Minnesota on the farm, after church one Sunday, I ran upstairs to my bedroom on the second floor and I put on a disguise, a really good disguise. Long, dark-haired wig, shaded sunglasses, kind of like William had, and I darkened my teenage eyebrows and mustache. I wore a ripped army vest with no buttons or sleeves, no shirt, a big gold medallion, ripped jeans, dirty shoes, and I changed my voice like this. And then I climbed out the bedroom window, climbed down the tree, and I knocked on the back door of the house, acting like I was the person whose car had broken down and I needed to use the telephone, which was a very common occurrence in those days at our farm. People were always coming and knocking on the door. And my mom was in the kitchen. Oh, that's a simulation of what I looked like. Something like that. And my mom was in the kitchen cooking. So I came in and said, hey, can I use your telephone? Do you think she recognized me? You're not going to believe this. I talked to my parents for 10 minutes. They did not know who I was because they knew that I was upstairs on the second floor bedroom. So I couldn't be knocking on the door, acting like that weirdo. And I thought the gag was going to last 10 seconds, just like you. I thought it's going to be over very quickly. After 10 minutes, they still didn't know who I was. And inside I was thinking, this is the greatest gag ever. I'm fooling my parents so bad. It's going to be so funny when I reveal myself to them. But then after a while, I started to get a really weird, strange sensation that I never anticipated. I started to feel bad. I'm looking at my parents. I'm looking at the two most important people in my life, and they don't know me. They don't know me. Remember that statistic that said about loneliness? People want to be known. They want to be recognized. They want to make a human connection. I was looking at them. They didn't know me. I was unknown, unloved, and unwanted. They didn't want me there. Literally, my mom went into the dining room and she said, Roy, there's a strange man here who wants to wait in our house for the tow truck. You go tell him to wait out by his car. So my dad comes in, first time he's seeing me, and I think, okay, this is going to be this test. He's going to tell. He comes in, gives me a big grin. I thought, oh, that's it. He came in supposedly to, kick me out of the house, and he gives me a big grin, and I said, can I wait here? And he said, sure. What would have happened if my own dad had kicked me out of my house? Wouldn't that have been an embarrassing situation? I might have just left and never come back in my disguise and tell them what happened. But he said, yeah, you can stay here. And then after a while, he said, well, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to meet my crazy parents, but they probably wouldn't recognize me. I whipped off the wig. They laughed. Fortunately, they had a good sense of humor. They laughed and laughed and laughed. They talked about it for a week. It's part of the family legend now. It was very fun, but I still remember that feeling. I didn't like that feeling, not being known. You know what? That's how people feel when they come into a group. Maybe that's how some of your guests come in here. Maybe that's how Ed felt when he didn't know anybody here. First time, right? Or the other first timers. I don't know if Rick was brand new, right? Right? And so you come in and that's how people feel. Maybe they come into your company, they're a customer, they don't know anybody. They don't feel good, they feel uncomfortable. So if you meet them and greet them and call them by name, that's like throwing a life preserver out to a drowning person. They feel wonderful about it. Hey, we made a connection. That's why people like to hear their names. So learning and calling people by names is a good thing to do, not just because it's good for you, because you're making another business connection. It's good for the other person because you're making a human connection. And that's the best type of connection, isn't it? People will remember you for that. Well, think about Sue, the college graduate. What if she had said, John Brown? Yeah, it's this guy right here. Do you think she would have been remembered for that? Absolutely. It's not a guarantee that she would have gotten the job, but she certainly would have been remembered. That would have put her in the top category. You want to be in the top category? Remember people's names. Pay attention. My book is called Remember the Room, and you could call it Own the Room. Would you like to be the person who owns the room and knows everybody? Would you like to be the CEO that knows all of his employees? When I spoke at a Vistage group a few months ago, there was a man there who said he didn't know the names of all of his employees. Okay, he had a lot of employees, but just think if he did know them, if he did call them by name, how that would make them feel, right? That would make them feel wonderful and great. So you can use your memory powers. Your memory powers are a tool. The goal is not memory. The goal is to make strong business and personal connections, right? Now let's talk about how that happens. A practical example. I was a magician for 20 years. That's what I did, and in Rochester. And after I quit doing magic, I came up to the cities to do speaking and some other things. I started an online magic store, and I wanted to sell some magic tricks that I had created to the magicians in the Twin Cities, but I didn't know very many of the magicians in the Twin Cities. So I went to a magic lecture. That is a lesson where a magician teaches other magicians his tricks, for a price, of course. But this magic lecture was held at Eagle Magic, which is in Bloomington now. But a little trivia about Eagle Magic. Eagle Magic is the longest running, continuously running magic store in the country, right here in the Twin Cities, owned by Larry Kalo. So this lecture was going on there, and I wanted to promote my store. So I printed up a bunch of business cards that had the store URL on there so I could advertise it. But I couldn't just go into the magic lecture and indiscriminately hand out the cards to all these strangers, like some street huckster standing on the corner handing out information about a new rib joint, because that would have been rude, crude, and socially unacceptable, right? It was just got tossed. So instead, as I at the lecture, I was paying attention. People would talk to each other, and they'd share each other's names, and I'd be paying attention. I'd go, oh yeah, let's see, Barry and let's see, and Fran and Roger and Dave and Randy. They'd be talking to each other, and I'd say Ed, and I'd say Matt, and I'd say Tim, I'd say Kurt, and I'd say Dick, and I'd say John, and I started learning those names. Marshall, Herman, Bob. I went through you guys, right? So I learned the names of all the magicians of the group. So when the lecture was over, during the social time, I'd say, hey, hello, William. And the magician would come up to me, and you could see the question mark in his face, like, this guy must be a magician that I've met, and I don't remember who he is, because he knows my name. And so I was very naturally able to hand out my business card to all of the people, because I was obviously a friend, because I knew their name. So what we're talking about here is acquisition. Every business person knows that customer acquisition always takes more money than retention. This is an easy way to quickly acquire some customers. So memory recall is just a tool. Memory recall is just the key to the door of the relationship. Once you turn the key, walk through the door, then the rest is up to you, what you do with that business relationship. Now, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity for some questions, just a couple of questions right now, and then I have one more point I want to make, and then we're going to do just a few more questions, okay? But has anybody got a burning question right now? Okay, first one up there, I think. Let's see if I look back there. Looks like Roger. Tom. Roger. Yeah, Tom, got it. Okay. Oh, yeah, I didn't even name that Tom over there, did I? Okay, so go ahead, Tom.
What do you do about someone with a very foreign name?
Yep.
Maybe even one that's hard to pronounce.
Yeah, and the foreign people are used to Americans not being able to pronounce their names, right? So you just ask them, be honest. When I was at my daughter's housewarming party, she had 7 friends there, and one of them was from Japan. And he had an unusual name. So I asked him how to pronounce it. And then I asked him how to spell it. And then I said, do you have a nickname that people call you? Maybe a shorter term. And then whatever that is, use that nickname or part of that nickname for a name image. There was one more question. Yes, Tim.
A lot of interaction field is done on the internet or by phone. Do you have some way to help you remember that kind of, you may be doing business with them, and you have repeated contacts with them. You don't know what they look like, and then you meet them at some event. What's your suggestion?
All right, the question was about meeting people online. You meet people online. People look different when they're online if you see them in a Zoom meeting or something like that. I was at a Speakers Association Zoom meeting for many weeks, and I saw lots of speakers there. And then just last Friday, there was a live meeting, and I went there, and I recognized the people from the Zoom meeting, but not all of them. One of them I didn't recognize, but because they look a little bit different. But if you haven't seen their face, you're off the hook. You don't need to know you're not required, you're not expected to remember what they look like and name them, right? If you're talking on the telephone, just write their name down. I'll tell you, one of the pet peeves for me is when I call up a company and I say, hi, this is Bob Miller. I'd like to speak to Marshall, please. And the secretary receptionist goes, oh, I'm sorry, he's not in here today. Let me take a note. What was your name? That's their job, to remember the names, okay? So, if you're on the telephone, write it down. And you should write down notes whenever. Remember review? Remember the third tip is review is required? Write down names. All right, let me go on to the final point here. And that is that all you have to do is imagine. Imagine that you can recall names and facts about people. You can if you can imagine. But we have a problem, and that is that our memory leaks. This is the curve of forgetting. You see how steep this is? This graph is basically saying that after 2 days, you've forgotten more than half of what you've learned. You guys are hearing some great stuff today. You say, wow, I'm going to remember this. I'm going to try to apply this. In 2 days, you won't remember half of it. That's just a fact if there's no review. Review helps. Look at that red line. See how that is less steep? At every one of those green arrows is a point of review. Every time you review, you will remember more and more and more. So I've got some practical applications for you, some ways to help you to review what I'm telling you here today. Okay. Here's 3 free ways. The first way is you can subscribe to my free email course. And in a moment, I'm going to be giving you the email or the QR code so that you can subscribe to that, so you can use your camera for that. The free email course, it's only 20 weeks long. You get 1 email a week, and it teaches memory techniques. You can unsubscribe if you don't like it. The second tip is I've got stickers for you that say, be memorable. Remember, if you remember other people, they'll remember you. The first tip that I told you was remember to remember. This will help you. The stickers are at the back of the table where the books are, and they're free. The stickers are free. Every one of you can take one, and you place it someplace in your office, at your home, or in your car that will remind you to be memorable, to remember names. Okay? And the third one is you can practice the look, listen, link technique anytime. Whenever you meet somebody, you can practice it. Was there anybody here that I didn't name, that I never said your name? I got all of you. You guys are all Herb, yeah, I said your name, right? You guys are all very, very memorable. Sometimes when I get done watching a movie, I can't remember the names of the characters. I remember the actor's name, but not the characters. You can use this method and practice. Practice it. Now, those are 3 free ways. Let me tell you about two more ways. You can be rock star. My book is available, besides here today, it's available on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, or audio format. Also, team training. I do training like this all the time. Large group, small group, one-on-one, ongoing training, whether it's standing up like this or whether it's a workshop for several hours. Imagine if your team or your group had some type of training like this. That's a way to really get everyone on your staff cued in on this. So I want to encourage you to use your memory powers to remember the room, to make strong business and personal connections. I know you can do it. Remember, it's not memory, it's just your imagination. You can do it. I'm going to open this up for questions to wrap this up, and then I'm going to put up a QR code here, and I'm going to ask for some feedback from you guys. If you snap this QR code, you'll go to my website, and there's a survey. It only has 2 questions. The first one is, rate this message from 1 to 10, with 10 being the best. Just put down a number on there. You can do this anonymously. Thank you, Bill. You can do this anonymously. And the other question is just a blank line for you to put in any comments, questions, or critiques. That's all, 2 things. It's very easy. Please go to my website. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Now, if you leave your email address, then you'll be automatically subscribed to my 20-week course. And you'll also get 5 free jokes. In case you have to come up here like Victor and tell a joke at your presentation. The jokes actually relate to a different message. I teach about remembering the speech, and the jokes are part of that, but you get them free also. So let's talk about questions. Yes, Bill. Did you think I was sincere? That's great. I guess it worked. No, that's just, you gotta like people, right? In fact, liking people will help you to remember names. But yeah, I like people, so that helps me, makes it really easy. Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
wow,
Yes.
right?
Yes, Bruce. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for saying that, Bruce. I just turned 66, so I have, the same issues as everybody else, okay? But what you said about remembering a series of disparate words that don't relate to each other, I teach that in my book because I'm teaching the linking method, and mental association linking is required. So I teach how to remember a list of 10 items in the book. Thank you. Other question? Yes. Looks like Bill.
Memory for other things.
numbers, places, things?
Yes. Bill's question was, what about memorizing other things? My course, the book is specifically teaching about remembering names, but it does teach about the linking method, associative linking, and that will help you with any type of memory. And in my advanced courses, I teach about how to remember names and dates. But these days, I mean, I started the advanced course before there were smartphones. These days, you don't really have to worry about remembering names and dates because your phone does it for you. But your phone can't remember that person in front of you. That's why I focus mainly on name recall now. And that's it. Thank you very much for your participation. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.